Morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Ashley Cox, and I'm an English teacher and literacy coach at Howard High School.
And I'm Kristen Barbary, and I teach English 10 and 12 at Eastridge High School.
So this morning we're here to talk about interactive Google Slides. They're also called Hyperdocs. And Kristen and I did a session last week just on introduction to Google and Google Classroom, and we thought that some of the stuff that we do with Google Slides in our classrooms would be very beneficial to teachers at this time. So one thing I want to start with is that what Kristen does and what I do are inherently different, but there are some commonalities. They do all work with inside Google Slides. So we're just going to start with showing what's the differences in what we do. So just a quick demonstration of what the activities that Kristen looks like compared to what the activities that I look like, and then we're going to kind of do a demonstration on how do you actually build the assignments and the interactive Google Slides that we create. So Kristen's going to go first with just showing what does her interactive Google Slides or Hyperdocs actually look like.
All right, thanks, Ashley. I'm going to share my screen with you all. There we go. All right, so like Ashley was saying, we do things a little differently, but they are both within Google Slides. And mine are more of a Hyperdoc. So what I would do is post this in a learning platform. I'm more familiar with Google Classroom. So that's what I use. So I would post this for students to interact with. Of course, I have my clear learning target. But how I use it in my class is students kind of use this presentation or slide as a home base. And then they are, I've hyperlinked things for them to see or look at or interact with outside of the Google slide. So here I've hyperlinked, and I'll show you how to do that, Padlet, which is a nice collaborative website for students. And then I've hyperlinked to Google Doc for them to interact with. I use Edpuzzle a lot, and I'm going to go more into detail about this, but everything is hyperlinked. So this is their home base, and then they're clicking on these links to go outside of the slides. And you'll see the difference between how I do it and how Ashley does it. But yeah, that's just kind of the overview. And then after Ashley shows hers real quick, then we'll go more into detail about how we build this for our students to interact with. So I'll stop sharing, and Ashley, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, and I'm going to go into how I do it. Kristen's is more of what we'll consider a Hyperdoc. I do consider mine interactive Google Slides because most of the things that I do stay with inside the Google slide, and I'm going to show quite a few examples of what that looks like. There were a few people on yesterday that talked about being elementary school teachers who really thought some of it would be beneficial to them. So this is an example of the first one that I built. I did this at a Do Now in a high school classroom, just a really quick bell ringer. And essentially what this is a drag and drop assignment. So it starts out looking just like this, and students, they have to drag the element to the correct place on the plot diagram. So if they want to say what the inciting incident is, they will drag that to the correct answer. And then the second slide is exactly the same thing. They're matching the elements to the definitions. So this is really just a drag and drop assignment where students are labeling. Okay. In addition to that, I have an assignment that's called Choosing a Genocide. And I built this one. I'll show you all later actually how I built it. But for this assignment, students would actually have to go into present mode on their computers, and they will need those directions that they have to put it in present mode for it to work correctly. So for this assignment, we were choosing a genocide, and they had quite a few options. The first thing that they saw was directions that told them which continent they would prefer to study a genocide in. So I'm gonna go ahead and click Asia. And then from that, they say what genocide in Asia they'd like to study. So they want to study a genocide that took place at the same time as the Holocaust in a different part of the world. They're going to click that. And then on this slide, I embedded a video that they get to watch about the Forgotten Holocaust. It's called the Nanking Massacre. So from that, students would watch the video. If they decide they like that Holocaust, they would click written response, or that genocide, they would click written response. If they're not interested in that, they can click not interested and go back. And it takes them back to the first slide. And I'll show you all when we get into the description on how to do that. I also build things that are very research. I teach high school, so this was an introduction to research assignment for some ninth graders. I really wanted them to put all their research in the same place so that I can see what they're doing. So I built pretty much cute graphic organizers, and then with inside that they had text boxes where they wrote in the information that they researched throughout their unit. Okay. Last, this is assignment that's also drag and drop, just kind of like the original plot sort, but it's a little bit more complex. So it was about identifying claims in a pretty complex piece called We Charge Genocide. So on this side, I put the claims for my students, and on this side for section 1, they received evidence to be able to help them. So they would identify which claim they thought went with section 1, and they have the paper copy of their article as they're doing this. They'll drag this here, and on this side, they got to say which supporting evidence helped them to figure that out. On the right side in section 2, they got to identify a claim, but they actually had to type in evidence from their article. Right? So it became a little bit more complex than just simply dragging and dropping boxes, and the pink boxes my students were required to type in their evidence. So it just kind of ramped up the rigor just a little bit as we were doing an introduction to this standard. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. At this point, what questions do we have? And Christina, you can either use the chat box or you can just unmute yourself and ask questions that way as well.
I have a question for the, I think it was the one you were in presentation mode, Ashley.
Yes.
Did you have a component on there where they were supposed to type a response as well while they were watching the presentation mode one for after they watched the video?
So at the end, when they're ready to write their response, they would have to pick push escape. They'll push the button that says written response, and they have to click escape to go into regular Google Slide mode, and they can type their response in.
Okay, I didn't know if you had like Kristen a spot where they clicked on like a link in it, and they had their responses were collected somewhere else.
That probably would make a lot of sense. Like, so for my students, it's like my ninth graders, when I made that year, I really wanted to keep them inside the same place. But that would have made sense to maybe go to another doc where they type something in, or you can link it to a site like Padlet where they can type in stuff as well.
When you assign this in Google Classroom, can you set a Google slide to make a copy for each student, or are they all working on the same document?
You do make a copy, whether it's on Google Classroom. I actually use Canvas this year. And I can show you all how to turn, so for students to make a copy that way as well. But they do get their individual copy.
We have another question about devices, and this came up yesterday. Students can use an iPad from what we gathered, but they would have to have the Google Slides app downloaded to be able to interact with the Google Slides. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Arthur.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Okay. So Kristen is going to go ahead and go into actually how do you build this? What does this look like? If you have questions while she's going, you're welcome to put those in the chat box and I'll answer them, or you're welcome to also just unmute yourself and ask her a question as well.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to go back and share. And like I was, let's see, make sure I'm on the right one, saying before, my Google slide presentation it serves as a home base. So everything is hyperlinked within the slides so that students are leaving the Google slide presentation to do things on other sites, and then coming back every time they're finished with that particular section. So how I build this, it's actually pretty simple compared to Ashley's. Hers is more interactive within the slide. But I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks here, and then hand it back over to Ashley. So this is one I built on semicolons and colons, and I'm actually going to be posting this today for my 10th graders. So I, have my little title here, an essential question, in the text boxes, and then I inserted a picture and basic, but if you need a refresher, you can hit insert image. And then you've got some different options, upload from computer. A cool thing in Google is that you can actually search on the web while you're staying in the slide presentation. Or if you've got something saved in your drive, you can do that. But I usually put something that, as funny as semicolons and colons can be, something on the front there to kind of pique their interest. And then, of course, a clear learning target. This right here, again, my image I inserted, and I'll show you how I found that. I searched the web and I typed in target, and I used this first image here, and you just can click and drag and drop it into the slide. And then once you do that, you can format it, and I recolored it to the teal color down here. If you see my classroom, it's teal everywhere. And then I tweaked the transparency just to kind of give it my own style there. And of course, it's going to stay like that. Yeah, so introductory there. And then I've been using the 5 E's here lately to kind of structure my Hyperdoc lessons. It helps me, and I think it helps the kids too, to know what to expect. I didn't come up with the 5 E's. You can research all kinds of presentations and activities that follow. But what I've done for you all down here, I'll bring it up a little bit. I kind of gave you a definition and some examples of what each E could be to fit your content and grade area. So the first E is engage. So this is your hook, just like you would in a regular lesson, something to just get them thinking. It can be accessing prior knowledge, having students respond to a question. And because this is more of a Hyperdoc, I have hyperlinked where they're going to record their thinking. So if I click on this, there's the link right there. I'll go ahead and open it up for you. This is called Padlet. If you haven't played around with this, it's pretty user-friendly. It's free to make an account. And I made this board, and I put the same directions up here at the top. Add any information you know about semicolons and colons on this Padlet. And I posted some questions in the Google slide to get them thinking. So the cool thing about this is students can see each other's responses, which kind of helps out maybe the kids that don't really know what to put. And it's also good for me as a teacher to take a look at this to access or to evaluate prior knowledge. So if I can see some major misconceptions and try to address those later on in the lesson. So this is a cool site. If you've not used it before, I highly recommend it. So the way that I hyperlink that, I highlighted what I wanted to hyperlink, and this is the hyperlink button up here. It says insert link. So you click that, and then you paste your link down here in this box, and then you just hit apply, and then it automatically turns it a different color and underlines it so that the kids know that that's where they need to click. So that's my engage right there, just a way for them to start thinking about semicolons and colons. And then the next slide is all about exploring. This is my Bitmoji, by the way. I wish I looked like that right now. I'm in PJs. But this is the Explore slide, where students are experiencing key concepts, examining their thinking, maybe looking for patterns and relationships among ideas. And it could be predicting or forming hypothesis, making generalizations. So you can see there how the Explore slide could apply to really any content or even grade level. So again, I've hyperlinked a Google Doc that they are going to be interacting with. And Ashley's going to show you a different way to force them to make a copy. But when I shared this, when I got the link, I went to File and Share over here. It says anyone at Hamilton County Schools with the link can view. They can't edit it. So they're going to have to make their own copy. I also put that in the directions. Make a copy for yourself, because we don't want all the students typing into one document. I want everybody typing in their own document. And then this is an Explorer, so they're looking for patterns within these correctly written sentences and then writing their own rules down here. And I've got several different sections here with the different rules for semicolons and colons. So that's a document that they would be interacting with. Again, they're leaving the Google slide to do this and then coming back when they're finished with this activity. So come back, then it's explain. So I am a big fan of Edpuzzle, and I'll click on this. Again, they're leaving the slide. I've hyperlinked all of these things that they're going to. And this is also free. It's a limited account, and I think they've expanded what their free account offers during the coronavirus crisis, because I know schools are out. But this is where you would consider direct instruction. So I've got some videos in here for the linking function of a colon and how to use a semicolon. And the cool thing about Edpuzzle is there are these little teardrop stopping points where they have to answer these questions. I've set my settings on here where they can't skip, and they have to answer the questions. And they also can't be on another tab while the video is playing or the video stops. So they really have to get creative if they want to try to play the video and not really pay attention to it. So some other options, if you don't want to use Edpuzzle, you could always do a YouTube video or like a teacher-made video to explain or model a concept. I've been playing around with Screencastify, and I actually just recorded a quick thing on theme on my phone the other day because I was just limited with time and patience, and I just decided to use my phone instead of new technology. But if you wanted to embed a video, just like you would a picture, you would hit insert and then video. So if you wanted them to stay within the slide and not have them leave, you can look for that YouTube video through Google Slides. If you've got a URL for a video, you can put that here. Or if it's a video that you've made, this is my one on theme. Select, and it appears directly in the slide with the play button on it. So that's another option if you didn't want to hyperlink. You could embed the video directly into the slide. I'm going to stop there because I see a lot in the chat. Are there any questions that we want to stop and talk about? If not, I'll keep going.
Okay, hold on, Kristen. So I have
okay.
Does it also allow students to go back and watch the section again? It does. So they
Yes.
can re-watch the section before they answer the question. So it actually forces them to, because if they get to the question, they don't want to get it wrong. Most students will go back. So if you see on Kristen's screens now, she was just there. There was a little button that said rewatch.
Yeah, and I was going to show you, like, I think I got rid of them all. But you could also upload your own video. I know we're kind of getting off track with this, but you can upload your own video and add your own questions. But yes, they can go back and rewatch it. And that's actually one of the things that my kids have told me that they really like about Edpuzzle and just videos in general is, you know, they can go back and rewatch without having to interrupt the instructor, and they, you know, don't want to slow everybody else down. So I've been playing with blended learning this semester, and that's something that my kids really, you know, every day just about told me, I really like that I can go back and rewatch this. So absolutely, that is an option there. Any other questions?
I see someone asked a question earlier about Padlet. I did look it up. Padlet does only allow you to use three Padlets for free. But one thing that I've started to do is that when that day is over, I usually screenshot the information that's in that Padlet and then just change it. So it kind of gives you that Padlet over again with the same link that you originally had. So that's an option as well. If you can figure out how to just do a screenshot to store that information, then you can use those same 3 Padlets over and over again.
Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of the same thing with Edpuzzle. I think you can have 5 videos. Again, I think they are expanding during the virus stuff. But I just, like, if they're videos that I've made, like, I save them in my Google Drive and then get rid of them on Edpuzzle, and I can always reload them later. So that's another option. Anything else? All right, got a few more here. So that's to explain, and then I'm having them go back to the doc that they were working in and revise their thinking. And then the last 2 E's, elaborate. So I have a Google Classroom assignment where they are doing some practice Tennessee Ready style questions for this standard, and I'm giving them feedback via the comments. I am going to try something that actually was showing you about going back to the slides. So I'm really excited about playing around with that. But right now, again, their Google assignment is in Google Classroom. So they're leaving the slide to do something else as an assignment in Google Classroom. And then getting feedback from me. So Elaborate is all about applying new learning, maybe extending concepts and skills. So I'm asking them to take the information that they have so far and apply it in a different way with these Tennessee Ready style questions. And here's that document here. And these are taken straight from the benchmarks and Tennessee testing released items there. So they're just getting some feedback and practicing that multiple choice type questions there. And then finally, evaluate. And evaluate can look any way you want it to look, especially right now with online learning, you know, showing grace to students. I always use Mastery Connect in my class, but you could do something like a self-evaluation, peer or teacher, and then it doesn't necessarily have to be a Mastery Connect assessment. It could be a Google form. It could be, you know, a written reflection. It could be anything that you want it to be, but something to where they are, you know, using all that information in a culminating, evaluative way. So that's really it for me. I'm actually going to put this in my honors class. So because my kids aren't typing within the slide presentation, I'm not going to make a copy for every student. They don't need it because they are leaving the Google slide to do things outside of it. So I'm just going to share it here, not as an assignment, but as something in the stream. So I'm going to put something like, here is an activity for this week about semicolons and colons. Make sure you read the directions on each slide and let me know if you have questions. And then I would go down here and click Add, Google Drive. It's right here. And then post. And one thing, because I'm using Mastery Connect, and that's my honors class, you know, is different from my other two 10th grade classes, I could select more than one class, but because their Mastery Connect code is different in each class, I'm only posting this for my honors 10th grade class. I'll have to go in and do that individually and change the code and make copies of my Google slide presentation. Post. And I should start seeing some interaction on Padlet here in a little bit. I'll check back in a few hours and see if anybody's gotten started on it. So yeah, that's my my interpretation of interactive Google Slides. Again, it's more like a Hyperdoc where this is the home base and they're leaving to do different things on different websites. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can easily see the chat over here.
Before we move on, does anybody have any questions for Kristen? If you do, you can just unmute your mic to ask questions you have, or you can put those in the chat. I'm going to give you all time to ask her any questions about how she actually sets up her her interactive Google Slides or Hyperdocs. Okay. So we'll I'll go ahead and start, and then we'll come back at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I did want to show, before I start how I built mine, I do build Hyperdocs that are similar to what Kristen did. So this is something that I built about conflict in my classroom. You can say it has different titles, but it's very similar to the strategy, the 5 E's that Kristen does. I use explore and interact, explain, apply, share, and reflect. I had some videos that were hyperlinked, and then I had some articles that my kids worked on. But they did on this is a link to a Google form that they put some answers in, and they had a Padlet that they did some work on. So I do things similar to what Kristen does, but we just decided to show different things for our sessions today. So I'm going to start with first just showing how I would set up an interactive Google Doc. I'm going to do an example similar to what I did yesterday, and it's about math. But the first thing I want to show people is what I do is I work inside the Slide Master. I think we have some questions coming in, Kristen. Okay. Yes. I'll have some tips for elementary that'll make it easy for them in a second, and it might make sense once I get started. So one thing that I do is I work with inside the Slide Master. Let me show again how I got there. If you go to Slides and you go to Edit Master, I do a lot of my work inside the Slide Master so that my students can't move things that are supposed to stay in place, okay? So I'm gonna start by just adding some type of background. Okay, and then I'm gonna add a word art that says adding and subtracting. In my head, I want to do division, but I might not teach that lesson too well. So we're going to do adding and subtracting. And the only thing I'm doing right now is making just a basis of a presentation that students are eventually going to write on. So I'm going to add adding and subtracting, and I'm going to add directions. Actually, let me stop right there and just show you what I'm doing. This has become my slide, and essentially by putting things in the Slide Master, it won't move. Okay, so what's on that slide will not move unless kids go into the master and change stuff. And most students don't know how to do that. So I'm gonna go back to Edit Master, And if I duplicate this, I'm going to add a section that's just about adding. I'm actually going to make something that says creating. I don't know if elementary kids would call them equations. I'm going to put adding single digit numbers. And then I'm going to put directions. And I am building all of this in the slide master. You're going to see in a second why I'm doing that. So create a equation. I'm just going to write create equation that uses single digit numbers correctly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up for the students a equation. And I'm going to put plus, that's the plus sign. And I'm going to put an equal sign. I want to change this color. Okay. So essentially the only thing I'm doing is building what's on the back of this assignment. So this is what I have now. I'm gonna push the plus sign and I'm gonna add this slide that I created from the slide master. Again, it's just a background that can't be edited. Nothing on this slide will move. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you all to know is that nothing that's in the slide master will move. And now I'm going to add some numbers for students to work with. So the first one, I just click insert word art. I'm gonna make some numbers. At this point, the only thing I'm doing is copying and pasting to make this process go easier. It's just making numbers for students to use. So now students have numbers that they can use. You can choose to just give them one set if they're going to be on more than one equation, or if you want them to be on multiple equations, you can give them more than one set of numbers. But the only thing that students, and this would be really good for just an elementary class to do, is they're going to just put 1 plus 2 equals 3. And now that's a really quick way to just see if your students can make equations. So this is the basis of what I do. This is a very simple version of it, but I make things in the slide master and then give my students movable elements that they can use throughout the assignment. Okay. Before I go on to something a little bit more complex, do we have any questions about this process?
It's not a question, but somebody had commented about composing music. So I'm wondering, like, could you in the master slide put like a music staff and have them drag and drop notes and like give them, the 4/4 or whatever. I know very little, but that may be an idea, if you're wanting them to compose something, something like that. Emma, I saw your comment earlier. Just an idea, not a question.
Okay. Anyone else before I go on to something that may be a little more complex? Okay, so one thing that Arthur is saying is that you can create a video on how to show your kids, especially your younger kids, how to interact with the content. I do that a lot for my students just to make sure that they know the expectation, especially if you're starting something like this outside of the classroom. They may need a small video on how do they actually do this. And that's something simple that I think can be done. So I'm going to go to this one. This is the Choosing Genocide, and I want to show you all, before I get started, everything is built within the Slide Master. When I first started making these, I would build the background. I would click File, Download as a it should give me a sign to say Download as a PNG. Let me go out the master. File, Download as a PNG, and then I would insert whatever background I did as whatever picture I saved as the background. That became an issue when I wanted to use the same thing the next year and maybe make an edit, because I didn't have that original work. And that's what got me to working inside the Slide Master. So you can see what I have here is just a lot of different things that are built inside the Slide Master that helps my students work with inside this assignment, right? The biggest thing I want to show is how are my students jumping around this PowerPoint. And it's the same thing as working with a Hyperdoc, but I am hyperlinking inside the slide, right? So this element here that says Africa, this box that says Africa, it's hyperlinked to slide 3, right? Asia is hyperlinked to slide 4, Americas to slide 5, and Europe to slide 6, right? So I'm going to show you all how to do that. You don't have to have anything on that slide yet, but you have to know where you're going to do that. So right now I'm going to click on the one that says Africa. I know it's supposed to go to slide 3. And if I click it, it takes me to slide 3, but I'm going to show you how you do that. So if you're on an element, hold on, trying to delete it first. Okay, so now I'm going to click on the element, and if I remove link, if I right click, I can click link, and it says link to slides in this presentation. Okay. And then I'm going to tell it that I want this to go to slide 3, and I'm going to click apply. And that's how you link within other slides in the presentation. Now, so when anybody clicks Africa within inside my presentation, it automatically sends them to slide 3, where they can choose one of the African genocides. Okay. Other things, like they have videos. Essentially, the only thing I did was I clicked insert video, and then you can either search on YouTube, or if you know the URL of the YouTube video, that's what you insert. Normally what I do is I insert the URL of the YouTube video, because I go on YouTube beforehand and I search for different things that I'm looking for. I'm not sure, Emma. I saw your question about, is there a way to check or mark off things that you've already looked at? There is not, because literally they can't move anything. Like if they look at this one on Africa, I guess they could come out of the present mode and push delete. It's theirs. It's not going to hurt anything because they're not editing the master copy. But there is not an easy way for them to mark off the elements that they've already looked at. And then, what else I want to show? And the last thing on this one, the only thing this is it's also in the Slide Master where the assignment was built. And then the only thing that is moving on this one are the elements where students actually write in. So this is just like a note catcher for my students to gather, take notes while they're doing their research, and then it being a little bit organized way to help freshmen write a research paper. And that's what I have at this point. Do we have any questions? You're welcome to write in the chat, or you're welcome to just unmute yourself and ask those questions aloud as well.
And I will say, kind of going back, Arthur mentioned making short videos of showing kids how to interact. My students have been doing stuff like this in the class, so it's nothing new. But I would say to make your instructions as clear and concise as you possibly can, because you're not going to be in the classroom with them to quickly answer questions that they have. So, Arthur, do you have any, I mean, would you recommend using like Screencastify, or just what would you recommend using? What did you use with your fourth graders?
I mean, we had the benefit of being in the building
Right.
originally to help show some of those things. So I would use, Screencastify or Loom is a good tool. Loom doesn't have the 5-minute limit, so that's nice. And it has some extra drawing tools while you're in the middle of making your video. So that is a bonus to help show specifically where you want students to click or drag. So yeah, one of those tools might work. And if you put your video in Drive or on YouTube, you could actually put your direction videos right into the Google slide, and kids could watch it right at the beginning, maybe on slide 1 or 2, to get them used to or kind of oriented around what they're going to see. And if you showed them in the actual, like if your video was showing them in the actual Hyperdoc or the slide that they're going to use, then that would really help make it pretty concrete, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, especially for the first one, to do it inside the assignment that they're actually going to be interacting with. And I would also recommend Loom. I've just started trying it in this experience, and it's probably one of the simplest video creator that I've used thus far.
I played around with Screencastify, and I had trouble because like it gives you the option to put it directly into Google Classroom, but it seemed to take forever to load, and my kids kept saying, we can't view this, we can't view this. So I'm excited to try Loom for some videos for my kids.
Do we have any other questions at this point? Anything that you would like Kristen and I to show you? Questions you have? We can answer questions about Google Classroom or Canvas. And we're pretty knowledgeable about just the Google platform as well. All right, well, we have no other questions. We'll go ahead and end our session on interactive Google Slides. And I'm going to put my email, and Kristen will put her email in the chat. So if you have any questions as you are making your Google Slides, you're welcome to email us, and we probably could jump on a Zoom or something to kind of help you with what you're working on as well.
Arthur, is there a survey? Are we still doing that?
I haven't been doing it in my latest sessions, so I don't know.
Okay.
Greg has the survey, and
That's fun.
yeah, so I don't know. If you don't have one, it's not happening.
No, I don't have one. We hit record this time, so
awesome.
We did that. Yeah, well, thank you everybody for coming. Again, if you have any questions or need to screen share something that you're having trouble with, our emails are there. We'd love to help you. And thanks for dropping by.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Oh, wait, something just popped up in the chat. Here is the feedback.
Oh, there's a feedback form.
There it is.
For Monica. Okay, well, there is a form there. If you all wouldn't mind clicking on that and give us some feedback on the session, we'd love that.
I think I have to probably copy paste it, but yeah.